Hello everyone and welcome to another video on the Ordinary Boy Boxing channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing a career retrospective of Kell Brook. This is the first of a new kind of video for the channel where I'm going to be doing retrospectives of fighters' careers who have retired. Now obviously it could be the case with a boxer that they unretire, especially in the case of Kell Brook. There has been rumours that he might, but he is retired at the moment, so I'm going to do a video on him. I just want to give a shout out to one of my subscribers, RJ World Sports News, who asked if I could do a video on Kell Brook and Amir Khan's careers. So this is the Kell Brook one. I'm sure the Amir Khan one will come down the line, but today we're going to focus on Kell Brook. But thank you very much for subscribing. Before I get started, if there is any of your favourite fighters that you want me to do kind of a career retrospective on, just leave a comment below and let me know, and I'll put it on my video list and give you a shout out. The same with if there's an upcoming fight that I haven't covered and you want me to do a quick prediction, a quick pick, let me know and I'll do that for you and give you a shout out. And are there any fights from the past that you would really like me to review? Obviously when I do a fight review I score round by round. So maybe there's a fight that you watched, you scored differently from everyone else and you'd like to hear my opinion on it. Again, just let me know in the comments and I'll give you a shout out if you do. So anyway, our first career retrospective on Kell Special K Brook. Now Kell Brook was born 3rd of May 1986. He competed from 2004 all the way up to 2022. He held the IBF title from 2014 to 2017, and he held the British welterweight title from 2008 to 2010. Now Kell Brook started his amateur career at the age of 12. He was obviously trained, as he was throughout his whole career, by Brendan Ingle. During his amateur career, out of 36 fights, he won 31 of them. That's not a bad record at all. During that time, he won 2 ABA of England titles, 2 National Association of Boys Clubs British Boxing Championships, and a gold medal in the Four Nations. Obviously when he was growing up, Naseem Hamed was part of the Ingle gym, and obviously Naseem Hamed at that time was a star in his own right, and Kell Brook's gone on record to say that he really idolised Naseem Hamed. Obviously they fight quite differently, but I can imagine growing up around boxing and having a character like Naseem Hamed up in Sheffield while you're learning your craft has a big impact on a boxer's career. He then turned pro. He turned pro in September 2004. His first fight, he had a points victory over someone called Peter Buckley, and this was in Sheffield. He then fought against kind of several journeymen for the years following, until it went up to June 2008, and at this point he fought for the British Welterweight Championship, which he won, and it moved him up to 16-0 for his professional record. Kell fought Barry Jones. He went on to fight Barry Jones for the vacant British title. This was due to the current holder at the time, Kevin McIntyre, being stripped of the belt because of an injury that meant that he couldn't fight on, couldn't defend it. Brook beat Barry Jones. He beat him by TKO in round 7. It should be noted though that Barry Jones was kind of a late replacement. So yeah, and then he had a few defences. He defended the title against Kelvin Hall and against Stuart Elwell. He then went on in July 2009 to claim the Lonsdale belt, beating Michael Lomax. This was on the undercard actually to Amir Khan versus Andreas Kotelinik, I want to say it is. So yeah, he was on the undercard to Amir Khan. Obviously their careers would kind of intertwine each other for the preceding years after. And then he won that fight by TKO in round 3. Going on to September 2009, here he won the title of the Young British Boxer of the Year award, and obviously he was in good company when he won that. Previous winners have been Ken Buchanan, John H. Stracey, Barry McGuigan, Nigel Benn, Naseem Hamed, Joe Calzaghe and Amir Khan. So obviously, you know, some big names there. So that was kind of an first indication that his career was onto a good footing. In March 2010, he won the WBO Intercontinental title against Christoph Bienias, I think it said, and this was a stoppage in the 6th round. Then in 2011 was the time that he decided to leave Frank Warren and Queensberry Promotions and go and join Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. At the time was an upstart, well not upstart, but he was a relatively new promoter, the fresh-faced Eddie Hearn he was joining with after leaving Frank Warren. His first fight with Eddie Hearn came in June 2011, where he had a unanimous decision over Lovemore Nadu, where he captured the WBA Intercontinental title. Then he fought Ricky Hatton's brother Matthew Hatton. He won by unanimous decision, but it should be noted that he did knock Hatton down in the 9th round. This was a great success for Sky Sports, record viewing figures here, and it became the most watched fight of the year. Obviously, Matthew Hatton had Ricky Hatton's name going in, and Kell Brook was on the come up, so I can see why it was so popular. And at the end of this fight was the first call out Kell Brook did of Amir Khan, one of many that would happen throughout his career. And on to July 2012, he fought Carson Jones. Brook dominated this fight early, but then you could see him start to tire as the fight went on, and he was almost knocked out by the end of this fight. He did win by majority decision, and I did agree with that decision, but Kell Brook, similar to Ricky Hatton, similar to Billy Joe Saunders, ballooned up in weight between fights, and I think this was an after effect of that. You could see his cardio was not great towards the end of this fight, and I think that was because of the fluctuation in weight. But anyway, he did win by majority decision. Then he fought Hector Saldivia, I want to say. The winner of this fight would become the mandatory for the IBF World Championship. Obviously, this was a really important fight for Kell Brook because this was the last step to fighting for a World Championship. And he won, and he won well, and he knocked him out in round 3. So then we were going to get Brook versus the IBF champion, Devin Alexander. This fight was just rescheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled. I think at first Kell Brook was injured, then Devin Alexander was injured, then Kell Brook was injured again, and it got to the point where they actually cancelled the fight completely. So, which is not great for Kell Brook. You know, this is your one chance to fight for a world championship, and you're injured to the point of it getting cancelled. Not great at all. So what he did instead is July 2013 he had the rematch with Carson Jones. He looked a lot better in this fight than he did in the first one, obviously, and he TKO'd him in round 8. It took Kell Brook's record to 30-0, so an impressive record now for Kell Brook. He then went on to fight Senchenko. Now Senchenko was known by the British public at least for retiring Ricky Hatton not long before this. So this was a good fight to make because there was a lot of people going to watch it. And a lot of people were going to want to see Kell Brook beat him because he retired, obviously a fan favourite, in Ricky Hatton. And he did beat Senchenko. He TKO'd him in round 4. Then going on to August 2014, now this was the big one. This was finally the IBF Championship match that Kell Brook had been waiting for a long, long time, against Sean Porter. It was happening in Carson, California. Sean Porter, a very good champion, a very good fighter. I think he'd newly won the championship, so I don't think he'd had it long. Now, absolute transparency here. So I watched this back in 2014, so this was 8 years ago. I scored the fight in my head. I didn't do what I do now, where I kind of, you know, before I review a fight, I'll actually score along, write it down, write notes, add it up. I didn't do any of that, but I was scoring it in my head. And I was surprised at the end of the fight that Kell Brook won. I had Porter winning by a narrow margin, but I had Porter winning. But they give it to Kell Brook. The majority of people thought Kell Brook won, so I'll hold my hands up and say I was in the minority there. He won by majority decision. And he became IBF champion. Fair play to him. I thought before the fight that Sean Porter would absolutely batter him. He didn't, and Kell Brook got the nod. So, you know, well done to him. He became the IBF champion finally. He then, and from memory, I think he got stabbed on holiday. I think was what it was. Don't know why. I don't know if he was hanging around with the wrong people or it was just a random attack because he's famous, or I'm not sure. But this laid him off for 6 months. By the time he came back, he had to fight a mandatory because the time had lapsed. So we got Jojo Dan. This was really unpopular at the time. But to be fair to him, it was a mandatory. He didn't have a lot of choice. Either that or drop the title, which he obviously weren't going to do. He beat Jojo Dan. He knocked him out in round 4. kind of a nothing fight, kind of what everyone expected. He then went to fight Frankie Gavin later that year. This was wildly unpopular as well. There's not really an excuse for this. I don't think he was mandatory. It was being sold by Eddie Hearn as being the first time there's been an all-British welterweight world championship fight. Everyone knew what was going to happen, and what we thought was going to happen did happen. Frankie Gavin got knocked out in round 6. There was a lot of calling at this time that Kell Brook needed to fight a big name. So there was negotiations with Diego Chavez for that fight to happen, but it didn't. And the reason it didn't, I think you can guess why. Due to another injury of Kell Brook. Kell Brook was plagued with injuries, cancellations, reschedules, all these things throughout his career, and that was another example of it. So we got in March 16 instead, we got Kevin Bizier. Again, no one was happy. We just wanted to see Kell Brook with a big name. We're touring with Sean Porter, we were expecting Amir Khan, but instead we got Jojo Dan and Frankie Gavin, and now Kevin Bizier. So yeah, another unpopular fight. He was mandatory again though, so Kell Brook again didn't have much of a choice. He knocked him out in round 2, so it's very one-sided. He was then rumoured to be fighting Jesse Vargas, but the negotiations didn't really go anywhere, so it never happened. At this point, they were in a tough decision. They were in a tough position, sorry, because the public had had enough. We'd had Jojo Jan, Frankie Gavin, Kevin Bizier. There needed to be a good name. At the same time, Chris Eubank Jr. and Triple G were at final negotiations to be fighting in 2016. In the end, that fight didn't happen, mainly because of bizarre demands from the Eubank Jr. team, including a massive cut of the purse. I think his dad wanted Barry McGuigan to be on commentary. Really random demands, but yes, that fight didn't happen. So Kell Brook stepped in, as we all know, for Chris Eubank Jr. So he moved up 2 weight divisions. I think at the time that wasn't a common thing to happen. A lot of people were concerned for Kell Brook's health doing this. Kell Brook was also, although he wasn't risking his welterweight status or championship, he was risking his undefeated record, which was quite good at this time. So the fight happened on September 16th. Kell Brook looked a lot better than a lot of us thought he would. He really used his speed well in the first few rounds to negate Triple G and kind of outbox him at times. But Triple G, this was a prime Triple G, and he caught up with Brook. Actually broke his orbital bone from memory. I think it was his eye socket, his orbital bone. So the towel got thrown in round 5, and there was a lot of concern for Kell Brook. So we had a bit of a layoff there, another injury again for Kell Brook. He then came back and fought Errol Spence Jr. in 2017. Now this was such a change because we've been used to Jojo Jan and Kevin Bizier, and we've got Triple G and now Errol Spence, 2 pound for pound greats. During this time they were trying to negotiate the Khan fight, but it didn't go anywhere. I can see why, because Errol Spence was mandatory for Kell Brook's title. I think they'd have much preferred Amir Khan because it'd been a better pain and easier fight, but they couldn't. So he fought Errol Spence Jr. And it was kind of, Kell Brook did better in that fight than I thought he would, because I really rate Errol Spence. It was a back and forth fight, but Errol Spence was getting the better of Kell Brook. It ended in round 11 with a TKO. He was pointing to his eye a lot when he went down, so I think that was still kind of a problem from the Triple G fight. Then the year after, so he'd had a bit of a layoff again, he fought Rebachenko, now at light middleweight, so he'd moved up. He beat him TKO round 2. Then it was rumoured that Brook had split with long-time trainer Dominic Ingle, who he'd been with since an amateur. He did deny this, but it was notable that Ingle was, I don't think, ever in his corner after this. I don't know if Ingle had told him to give it up and he hadn't listened. I'm not really sure of the story. That's what I guessed it was, but I don't know. He then fought Zerafa. This was an eliminator for the WBA title. It was not a great performance from Brook, if I'm being totally honest, but he did win by unanimous decision. He's still trying to make the Khan fight at this point. They offered Khan $8 million flat fee to fight, but Khan decided instead to opt and fight Crawford. so that fight didn't happen. February 2020, he fought DeLuca. This was now 14 months out of the ring for Kell Brook, a long time. It's the WBO Intercontinental light middleweight title, sorry, so still up at light middleweight. And Brook did beat DeLuca, he knocked him out in round 7. Now on to November 2020, and he was fighting Terence Crawford. Obviously another pound for pound great in Terence Crawford. This was back down at middleweight, so he'd gone back down. No one was giving Kell Brook much of a shot in this fight, neither was I. It didn't go on long. He got TKO'd in round 4, which was what people were expecting, I think. And then in February 2022, so February of this year, we finally got Kell Brook versus Amir Khan, probably 10 years too late. The one positive I'd say on this fight compared to other fights that have happened too late is they'd both, in my opinion, they'd both kind of lost it at the same time, if that makes sense. They were still kind of both at the same level. They'd both depleted from world level and then gone down to the level they are now. So they're still kind of similar level. It was a good enough fight. Kell Brook won. He had a TKO in round 6. I was actually really glad that Kell Brook won out of 2. I'm not massive on either man, to be perfectly honest, so I didn't have a horse in the race, so to speak, but it meant more to, it was obvious that Amir Khan had been ducking Brook for many years, and it meant a lot more for Brook to win than Amir Khan to win. And I think that retired Amir Khan as well, so that was or did he fight? I think he actually saying that. I think Khan fought in Saudi Arabia or something. I will do a video on Amir Khan as well, so I'll go through that. But anyway, so Brook beat him, and then a few months later, May 2020, he retired, and that was it for Kell Brook. I hope he stays retired. I think he's give what he can give, and you know, what a way to end a career by actually beating Amir Khan, who you'd been calling out from way back in 2012 for 10 years, and you actually finally beat him. So yeah, that was a retrospective career of Kell Brook. What a career it was. Overall, Kell Brook at his prime was a very classy fighter. One of the best Britain had to offer in terms of boxing style. Brook's biggest and best attribute to me was his timing. In Britain anyway, it was second to none. World class. He was up there. He was so good at timing opponents. He was quick, but he wasn't the fastest. He was powerful, but he wasn't the strongest. But his timing was the key to a lot of his fights, and that is really what beat Amir Khan and would have beat Amir Khan back had it happened in 2012. I think was timing. His career though could have been a hell of a lot better had he not had such fluctuations in weight, had the injuries that he'd had the cancellations, had the time out the ring, all these different things that he could have, you know, impacted and didn't. And a bit of mismanagement, I think, from Eddie Hearn. You know, Eddie Hearn, to me, is such a character, but that actually sometimes stifles negotiations and people don't want to work with him. And I think that's probably why a few of those big fights that he should have had didn't happen, and we ended up getting Jojo Dan and Kevin Bizier. But Kell Brook will be remembered fondly, I think, by the British public. He was a world champion. He could have gone on to do more. By the time he'd fought Crawford and Spence, he was well under his prime. So yeah, that's my first career retrospective on Kell Special K Brook from Sheffield. Let me know in the comments below if you were a fan of Kell Brook or if you hated him, and what you thought of his career. And do let me know in the comments below if there's any fighters, as I said at the beginning, that you want me to do a career retrospective on. I'll put them on my list. I'll do that for you, and I'll even give you a mention. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Do subscribe if you get the chance, because it really does help the channel, and we're really growing well at the moment, so I want that to continue. Well, thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next video.